guys are so quiet. It's a contemplative crowd. Anyway, here we are, day 2. Day 2's a wrap. Do you have a good day 2? Show of hands, good day 2? Yeah, that's great. So glad you're here. My name is David Simpson. As you know, I'll just say the same things. I'm going to say all the same things I said yesterday, so you don't have to listen that hard. Or I could just skip it and just like what I said yesterday, today also. Bathrooms are still down there. The gallery's still in there. Still got cushions back there. If you need assisted listening devices, Fatima and Hannah can still help you. Let's see what else. Please turn your phones off. Oh, anyway, I said them all again. So look, that works. You got to do them. Turn them off. Anyway, we have a great faculty event in store for you this evening. We're featuring printmaker Paloma Barhaugh-Bordas. Woohoo! Wow, that was me. And also illustrator Mike Curato, who also has a graphic novel coming out next year, which we're very excited about. A big hand about that. Can't wait to see that. So all the business did I do all the business? Oh yeah, thank you for East End Books. Got to say that because they're awesome and they're really wonderful in helping us maintain the bookstore. Also, Cape Cod 5 Foundation and the Arts Foundation of Cape Cod for helping us support our public programming in the summer. I have taken a look at the sign-up list for student night across the way, and there's already more than a whole page filled up. So big hand to your bravery for signing up for the student night. If you haven't done so, I reckon. Who here has read at student night in previous years? Anybody with hands up? Do you find it to be a rewarding experience? Yes. Yeah, I think you would find it to be a rewarding experience, worth the anxiety and the deafening applause. It's a great hometown experience. So if you haven't signed up, I highly recommend that you do so. It's a really great event. I sent everybody an email today inviting you as our guests as a way of saying thank you for being a part of the FOC community to our summer salon, which is happening this weekend, Friday and Saturday, or Friday rather. Friday evening, we're doing a conversation up here on the stage with Sarah Schulman, who's a writer and activist and a longtime teacher here at FOC, and New Yorker journalist and Michelle Obama biographer, Peter Slevin. And they're going to have a conversation that they're calling 4 months before Election Day. They're both have their fingers on the pulse of politics in this country, and Peter is one of the he's an authority and kind of like swing state politics and dynamics, and it'd be a really interesting talk. So if you want to come, I sent information how to register on the event. You're more than welcome, and I provided a code that will give you a 100% discount. So please, I hope you can come. It'd be a really fun event. And then the other thing I want to remind you of is tomorrow at 12:30, we're doing a brown bag lunch at which Laura Shabbat, a longtime and beloved member of the Falk family, is going to give a talk about the history of Provincetown as an arts colony. It's fascinating. It goes all the way back to Hawthorne and all the very beginnings of the art colony here in P-Town. It's really great. So 12:30 here, bring your lunch. She's really great. She's also hilarious. So let's stop talking about all that stuff and let's get started, shall we? I would love to invite to the stage one of Mike's students, Juvia Ukert, who's going to introduce Mike. Please come to the stage.
Hi everybody. I hope this counts as my student talk on Thursday night so that I don't have to talk then. No? Okay. Well, you'll hear the same thing on Thursday night. Mike Curato is a multi-talented and exceptionally high achiever. Most normal people are pleased to achieve excellence in one area or one genre or one art form. Mike does all of the above. He's not only a writer and an illustrator, so double specialties. He's also a writer and illustrator in several genres. Children's books, children's picture books, young adult graphic novels, and I think next the adult graphic novel that David was referring to that is coming out. Since 2014, which is just the other day in human terms, he has written and illustrated more than 12 books. In addition to his author talks, school visits, teaching, traveling, translating, living a full life. I'm not going to list all of Mike's lovely books because he will, but I will list some of his achievements because he won't. And so Publishers Weekly named Mike a fall 2014 Flying Start, and that same year he won the Society of Illustrators Original Art Show Founders Award. His debut title, Little Elliot, Big City, I've got the big version of Little Elliot, Big City, the small version's out there, won several awards and has been translated into more than 10 languages. There are now 5 Little Elliot books. Mike is also the author of the delightful Where Is Bina Bear, a story that got conceived, created, submitted, and sold in 48 hours. And so, high achievement, that's his middle names. Most recently, Mike created Flamer, his debut young adult graphic novel, which was awarded the 2020 Lambda Literary Award and the 2021 Massachusetts Book Award. And it was also one of the most banned books in the US last year, which is an achievement, I think. He also illustrated several books by other authors and contributed pieces to other publications. He was born and raised outside of New York City, attended Syracuse University, earned a BFA in illustration, but these days Mike lives in Northampton, Mass. With Lee and Leia. Mike says in one of his blogs, "I like to create books that I wish I had when I was a kid. Fortunately, we now have his books." He also says, "My writing is my activism." He addresses serious social issues and painful personal issues. But he also celebrates friendship, love, hope, resilience, inclusion, and belonging in equal measure. He tells us that he gets it, and he tells us in a way that makes us understand that he gets it. Those are the 2 key therapeutic ingredients of psychotherapy. I'm a clinical psychologist, and so that's what I try and do. Being able to understand, but also the next step, being able to communicate that you understand. Mike does both. In his blog, writing about his book Flamer, he says to suicidal kids, "Stay here with me. We can see what happens. It won't all be good, but there's more good in the world than you know. Sometimes life pulls a reveal." I reveal to you Mike Curato.
Thank you, Jiva. That was so lovely. Hi. My name's Mike, and I'm teaching the picture book illustration workshop, and I thought tonight I would talk about how to make a children's book. It is really easy, just follow these steps. Okay, assignment 1, fulfill your lifelong dream of creating a picture book that captures the essence of everything you love about children's literature. See, easy, very easy. Step 1, eat cake. I cannot stress this point enough. You must eat cake to write or illustrate a picture book, but you have to eat good cake. Dara understands. Do not eat bad cake. Bad cake is not good. It is bad. We will revisit this point later on because it is connected to everything. Hello? Oh. Step 2, tell your inner demons to shut the hell up. Just stop it. Really, shut up. Okay, step 4. Think about the haunting drawings in Chris Van Allsburg's The Mysteries of Harris Burdick. Think about Hopper's Urban Melancholy. Think about the sophisticated cuteness of Michael Soa. Step 5, think about this kid. Think about how happy you were when you were making art then. There were no inner demons. Making things was easy. Step 6, draw things that are just for yourself. Make things that make you smile. Think about how innocent you were as a child. Think about how small you were, how everything was so big. Remember when mom sent you to the deli to get some cold cuts and no one could see you over the counter? Think about how invisible you felt. People cut you in line. You are not important. Tall people are important. Tall people get to have whatever they want, and I have to wait until someone notices me. Now think about when you got to help others. It made you feel taller. It made you feel compassion for the smaller person because you've been there. It made you feel compassion for your smaller self who still lives inside you. Sorry, is it possible to dim the lights that are hitting the screen? Maybe? Okay. Step 6, you go to a children's book conference. Things happen. You get some attention. You get an agent. You get a publisher. You get a book deal. Step 7, be sure to include cake in the story. Ensure it is good cake. Assignment 2. Since you were somehow able to complete assignment 1, now create a book that lives up to the first while using the same characters, but brings something new to the table. By the way, everyone is watching. Step 1, cry. You spent everything you had on that first book. This one will be crap. People hate sequels. This will be your Phantom Menace. Step 2, tell your inner demons to shut up. Step 3, cry some more. If you're not crying while you're making a book, you're doing it wrong. Step 4, think about your friends. Think about the ones that you can't even call friends because they are too close to be just a friend. Think about the times you have felt utterly alone. Think about hiding in the stairwell at school. Cry. Think about all the times in your life that someone has welcomed you into their family and treated you like one of their blood. Step 5, you make a book with lots of mice in it. As someone who lives in New York City, you're slightly horrified by this. But the book makes you cry. In a good way. Assignment 3, someone you've never met has written a manuscript about love that you love. An editor thinks that you're the person for the job. Get ready to draw creatures and come out over and over again to parents, librarians, and booksellers. Fun. Step 1, wiggle like a worm. Get comfortable with that feeling. Think about how you've wiggled nervously around the topic of being an out gay children's book author. Think about the schools who have hosted you who would rather gloss over that part of your existence. Step 2, now think about this kid again. Think about how he never had someone like him to look up to show him how happy he could be one day. Think about how there's a kid like that in every classroom in America. Step 3, draw cute bugs. Give one of them a mustache. Step 4, think about the authors, illustrators, editors who you learned were gay when you were an adult. You were blown away by this. These were names that you learned as a child. If only you knew who they were as well, what could have been different for you? Step 4, keep living your life authentically. Let that kid in the classroom see someone who's like them. Be happy. Assignment 4. Your readers in various classrooms demand to see Elliot at an amusement park. Combine with your obsession of old New York, simmer, see what happens. Step 1. In addition to cake, eat ice cream. Ice cream is good. Step 2. Think about having fun. Think about all the times you wanted to have fun, but you couldn't. Something was in the way. It came in different forms, but its name was always fear. Fear is bad. Fear drowns me. Fear devours me. Fear paralyzes me. Think about all the times fear has told you that you can't. You looked around and saw that you were alone. You were alone, and the fear was everywhere. How did you get through that? How did you move past it? But then you saw a friend. They held your hand, and fear recoiled. Step 3, you think about this kid who you used to be, who you still are. You tell him it's going to be okay. You are a friend to yourself. Step 4, have fun. Assignment 5, a famous children's poet writes a modern-day story of the culture and perseverance of her people that includes 3 of your loves: travel, architecture, and classic cars. Your editor says you should illustrate it even though you know little about this culture. Step 1, use this project as an excuse to start buying Matchbox cars again. This kid is so happy. Step 2, call your friend who you studied illustration with in college. Convince him to go to Cuba with you to act as a translator because your Spanish is abysmal. Step 3, you go there. You meet the author's cousins and stay in their bed and breakfast. You struggle with the language, but you laugh together. You take pictures of lots of cars. You eat the food. You take pictures of paint-peeled walls. You go on a road trip in a 1953 Chevy Del Rey to Margarita Engle's mother's hometown. You make friends with the driver and his wife. They name their car after the one in the story. You walk along the shore and you feel something, though you're not sure what that feeling is. You get back to Havana. You lie on your bed and listen to the song of the street. There's a man singing about his beans for sale. The air smells a little burnt. Step 4, you get back to the US. You don't understand why the world has to be so divided when there's so much that binds us. You start working on the illustrations, and you feel strangely homesick for a place you only visited for a week. Step 5, keep driving forward. Assignment 6, create a book based solely on your love of a season and see if it ends up meaning anything at all. Step 1, eat apples and pie. Eat apple pie and corn, but mostly pie. Think about this kid's love of fall and pie. Step 2, in the middle of the project, you make a startling discovery. You realize that you can no longer afford to live in New York. Tale as old as time. You have to leave your entire artistic and literary support system behind and move. Step 3, think about the fall. Think about how homesick you used to get for autumn when you lived on the West Coast. Think about the Apple Festival you loved to go to when you were in college. Think about how lost you felt then. Where were you going? How did you get there? Everything was uncertain, but maybe you wouldn't make it, but you felt something propelling you. There was a need to follow it. Step 4, visit the apple orchard you grew up visiting every autumn as a kid. Step 5, you move to a much smaller town with some decent bakeries. You find another support system. You keep going. You enjoy the fresh air. Step 6, it's fall again. You watch the election results come in. You don't know where we're going. You don't know why we're here. Everything is uncertain. Nothing is propelling you. You can't get out of bed. You can't stop listening to the news. You don't work for a month. Oh, I'm ahead of myself. Your editor calls you and tells you that you have to do the work because if you don't, then they've won. You immediately sit down at your desk and start drawing a lot of corn. Step 7, you finish, you march. You eat pie. Assignment 7, your best friend writes a manifesto of creativity in the guise of a picture book manuscript. She calls it the Song of Her Soul. She wants you to illustrate it, and her publisher agrees. Step 1, when you get the project, you and your best friend scream with joy at each other for hours. Step 2, think about Samantha. Think about everything she went through when she wrote this story. Look at the artwork she made with found objects that helped her get through those times. Think about how you've always had an insatiable need to create. Listen to Samantha talk about the people who changed this world because they channeled their pain into something that created instead of destroyed. Step 3, you decide to work in a completely different style because this is what the book calls for. Inner demons yammer on about people not recognizing your work and how risky it is working in a medium you haven't worked in before. You flip them the bird. Step 6, fill a box with dirt. Throw some marbles in it. Photograph some barnwood. Turn it into a rocket ship. Photograph some pillow stuffing. Turn it into a cloud. Photograph yourself in a bowl. Make it the tip of the rocket ship. Listen to Samantha tell anyone who will listen that you are literally in the book. Draw the rest of the stuff. Step 3, create a dragon out of autumn foliage. You have to order dried leaves online because it's spring. Step 4, build an igloo out of sugar cubes and marshmallow fluff. Watch it implode. Curse loudly. Rebuild it on top of a Tupperware. Keep it in your fridge until the book goes to press, just in case you need to reshoot it. Step 4, listen to Janelle Monáe's Tightrope a million times. Dance in your studio. Think about how you used to use anything you could get your hands on to make something. Drawings, pillow forts, origami, friendship bracelets, or sometimes just an entire world in your mind. Oops. Step 7, don't question why you're having so much fun. Just create. Assignment 8, create the inevitable holiday book for your book series. Step 1, freak out about creating anything remotely original on a topic that has been published to death. Worry that your peers will think you're a sellout. Panic that it won't live up to the other titles. Step 2, calm down. Step 3, write some really bad stories. You have never written such bad stories. They all end up at an orphanage on Christmas Eve. They are the worst. Get them all out. Step 4, think about how much this kid loved Christmas. Step 5, you read Catherine Applegate's Wish Tree. Think about how important friendship is. Think about being an outcast as a kid and wishing you had friends. Think about your series and how it's all about friendship. Think about how the Christmas spirit is all about friendship and love. Step 6, do math. Step 7, create Christmas friendship book. Step 8, you listen to the goldfinch while you work. You draw your puppy, nieces, and nephew. Step 8, you think about your sister and your cousins and your friends who don't see themselves in books. You decide to make the character who is the key to the mystery of the story a little Asian girl, and you're proud. Assignment 9, fulfill your other dream of making comic books. Make a graphic novel for that one queer kid in the classroom who is now about to enter high school. Step 1, think about making comics for years. Step 2, take a workshop at an illustration conference with Linda Berry that's about writing for illustrators. You walk out telling yourself, I can do this. Step 2, crap your pants just thinking about the sheer magnitude of the undertaking. Crap a second time thinking about how to get through to that kid. Step 3, travel back in time to the worst years of your life. Relive it every time you work on your book. Assume fetal position. Step 4, think about your bullies. Think about your body dysmorphia. Think about not being white enough. Think about not being Asian enough. Think about knowing that you were different in a very scary way. In a way that you couldn't accept. Think about that time at Boy Scout camp, the summer before high school. You knelt in a chapel and placed your pocket knife against your wrist. Think about falling into an ocean of tears because you couldn't do it, and there was no escape from anything. Step 5, breathe. Step 6, remember that you're safe. Step 7, just keep breathing. Sorry. Step 8, remember that there are so many people out there who are not safe. Okay, we're going rogue here. It has a mind of its own. Let me try to do this. Yeah. Okay. It sounds. No. Uh-huh. I feel like it's on some kind of autopilot. Okay. Okay, great moment for that to happen. Okay. Some things are just out of our control, right? Still breathing. Remember that there are so many people out there who are not safe. Step 9, get back to work. Step 10, put yourself, your feelings, your memories, your struggle, your salvation, your story on display for the world to see. Piss off a lot of really mean people. But none of that compares to the love you receive. And the lives you will validate. So, you ask me how to make a picture book. These are my answers, but they're my answers. I'm sorry to tell you that I can't tell you how to make a picture book. You're the only one who can tell your story. I'm the only one who can tell mine. Don't think of getting published as the be-all, end-all of telling your story. That's a lot of pressure. Worrying about it stunted me as a storyteller. You need to get it out, even if you tell your story to just one person. It's important. Make it count. Make this life count. Tell them what you need them to know. You make a book because you can't not make one. Let's circle back to that first assignment, step 4. Make things that make you smile. When you're telling your story to yourself and you smile or maybe cry because you know it's true, it's your truth, and there's no one that can tell you otherwise. Making a book is about discovering who we are, and in each one, I find a new truth. What if everyone told their story? What if we knew the secret stories, the untold stories? What if we faced the stories hidden within ourselves? What if the world, what would the world be like if we could count on everything being true? You tell me. Thank you.
I feel we must provide more applause for Mike Curato. I don't know what to do now. I don't have the clicker. Anyway, thank you, Mike. That was really amazing. And why are we all here? We're here to tell our stories in one form or another, so it's really great advice. Thank you. Now I would like to continue by inviting one of Paloma's students to the stage to introduce Paloma. Please join me in welcoming Graham Brown to the stage.
That's good, yep. Hello, everybody. I'm Gray Brown, a Provincetown local and a big fan of the Fine Arts Work Center. And this week I'm taking a printmaking class with the very talented, inspiring, and I think quite joyful artist, Paloma, you even wrote out how to say your name, now I'm gonna screw it up. Barhaugh-Bordas. Okay, good. And I'm really pleased to introduce her this afternoon. Paloma Barhaugh-Bordas is an artist, educator, and activist living and working in Los Angeles, California. Their art practice, which expands from print media into installation, as well as social and collaborative practices, works at the intersection of migration, queerness, and ecology. I love that idea and the many ways Paloma demonstrates the flexibility and innovative approaches available by combining printmaking, painting, and other techniques in their work. While thinking through making, Barhaugh-Bordas asks how art can contribute to ecological knowledge and build interspecies understanding, an inquiry they began investigating by comparing the stories of naturalization, becoming local, between Americans and non-native plants. This work was shown alongside Ellen Gallagher and Alison Sarr, among others, through Project 5's 2021 online exhibition space. Barhaugh-Bordas has exhibited nationally and internationally, including solo exhibitions at the Handwerker Gallery, Buffalo Artist Studios, and Sediment Arts. Artist residencies include Casa Lu, Mexico City, Acre, Women's Studio Workshop, the Institute for Electronic Arts at Alfred University, My Lab in Japan, and Cala Art Institute. Originally from Denver, Colorado, Barhaugh-Bordas received a BA in Liberal Arts from Carleton College in Northfield, Minnesota, and an MFA in printmaking at the Rhode Island School of Design in Providence, Rhode Island. And I think what's really compelling is you'll see all of those influences as she shows some of the work. You can see this internationalism. It's really quite fascinating. So my pleasure to introduce Paloma and welcome her to the stage.
Hi, everyone. Thank you. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you, Falk, for having me. I don't know about all of you, but I'm one of those people who sometimes it's hard for me to be present because I'm so excited about what's possible. And I found myself this morning thinking, like, what's my workshop going to be next year? Because I love being here. It is so wonderful. And when I went into the shop this morning, the participants had already started making things that were like our next agenda items, and it's very motivating and inspiring and wonderful, not only to be around the participants, but the staff here who make so much happen creatively in this space. So thank you for having me. Okay, so let's see here. I'm gonna scoot this. We're doing fun gymnastics between these two screens. So bear with me 1 second. So I think about a few different authors a lot when I think about my work. Finding predecessors, the people who came before you, building a family. I think that's something that queer communities talk about a lot, your chosen family, and that is also something that as a person who works in academia, I love teaching. I spend a lot of my time doing that. I also look to a lot of different disciplines to find people who resonate with me. And one of those people is ecofeminist scholar Donna Haraway, and I often think about her writing, which specifically her interest in things that are non-human. So whether it's her book about pets or cyber cyborg feminism, this concept of like there's more going on than just what's human in this world is really important. And I think it's a humbling concept that I try to bring into my work as I make things. One of the takeaways that I have from Mike's beautiful talk is that we have to do things that we're really moved by. And that is actually a pretty radical concept in capitalism. And for artists especially, like we're not really embraced by capitalism, so to speak. The profession at least, the objects we make perhaps. But making art is a really important thing to do, and I think it's a drive that many more people have than we acknowledge. I think a lot of us are very creative people, and one way or another are making things. So yeah, we are here to tell stories. Okay, so just want to tell you a little bit about myself because my identity and who I am, where I come from, plays an important role in how I approach art making and my life. I'm a first-generation American immigrant on my mother's side. She and her 7 siblings left Nicaragua on a banana boat in the 1950s. The family landed in Tampa, Florida. Beautiful place. They began to make a life. My abuela changed all of her children's names to American names. She enrolled the youngest ones in school. She was a cleaning lady and also worked in the cafeteria at the Catholic school where they would hit my mother's hands with a ruler if she spoke Spanish. So from her journey, I inherited an experience shared by many immigrant families from Central and South America, where one's culture of origin is rejected in favor of assimilation and the promise of upward mobility, which we did realize. My unkie, as he's familiarly called, bought for his son for his 16th birthday like one of the longest cars that existed in the 80s. He was a record, he was a promoter. He was a record promoter, the worst of the whole music industry. It was a good one. There's a centerfold of him somewhere. Good looking guy. All right. So the promise of upward mobility, a good life. A good American life. My mother was the first in her family to go to college, but this was a hard bargain. She didn't relearn Spanish until she was out of her parents' house. She relearned it as a member of the Peace Corps in Chile, which is kind of an interesting like meta-colonization narrative. She has spent her life, her professional life, rebuilding her community, Latinidad. She's written books about it. And I similarly spend mine seeking roots. So Donna Haraway has a phrase that nothing comes without its world. And I think that this strikes home for me a lot because I wonder often how do immigrants or displaced people orient themselves if nothing comes without its world? Where do we belong? So this is a question for most Americans. How do we tell stories? How do we build worlds and weave communities together on this colonized continent? I'm a maker, and so I address these questions through my art practice by connecting to place. I look at what grows in a place. I look at the contours that shape the land around me and the history, not just human, but the history of living beings that define a place. When I read Nothing Comes Without Its World, I found an antidote to the areas of friction and collision that eat away at social and ecological connection, particularly the generational trauma that results from leaving your ancestral lands and shedding your culture, language, and traditions. So this talk will revolve around what Chicana scholar and poet Gloria Anzaldúa called a willingness to be between, which I approach as a persistent effort to look really carefully. I think they started that because I'm Nicaraguan and Norwegian, and so there's no homeland for people like me. There's not many of us around. And so I also don't see evidence of people like me at a number of my identity intersections historically, but I do start to see familiarity if I look for it, and if I look carefully. So I'll start by talking about the medium I work in most consistently, which is printmaking, and then move on to show a few bodies of work. My art practice involves looking for connection in what is growing around me. As creative research, this involves observation of nature, ecology, and plants. My work has required that I reconsider gaze and reevaluate my understanding of how our bodies relate to land and place. I'll touch on several writers I look to as guides, and next I'll talk about misusing technology, drawing webs of connection during COVID, and finally coming out of the closet as someone who loves sewing, quilts, fabric, and clothing. Last, I'll come out of the closet again, in order to talk about queering printmaking. Did we get it? There we go. I am trained as a printmaker, and I find myself most at home in print shops. I love that artists bring content into the print shop and then begin to make meaning through the process. Attributes of these processes, such as pressure, dissemination, accessibility, the matrix, are central to my studio practice as well. Printmaking as a medium is inextricably linked to advocacy and empowerment, dissent and democracy. Over time, I have drawn on that legacy more directly than others. At every step of the way, I carry the history of print within my work. I treasure the world that printmaking comes with. It's a generous and capacious medium. It's an art form intended to be bold and strident so as to amplify underrepresented voices. It simultaneously contains the nuance, fragility, and precision for subtle creative expression. This world of possibility is how I lead my classes. On the left, we have Carita Kent, or Sister Carita, the printmaking nun, pop artist who taught herself to make prints in order to teach printmaking, which I feel a particular resonance with as someone who identifies very strongly with my career as an artist and educator. And then Louise Bourgeois on the right, who is just embodying that like spirit of the creative elder that I hope all of us want to be at some point, grinding away on the press. With respect to printmaking, I am pressing images into a page, transforming the surface of the paper with pressure and ink, and creating a space of contact, touch, and embrace. I've started mentioning the attributes of printmaking as metaphors for embedding meaning into the work, and that's kind of like a theme in my work as well. So this is a very recent piece that I made as a part of an exchange, and that is the matrix on the right, and that's the resulting print on the left. So I'm gonna try to not tell the whole story, because I would love to just talk about how funny it is to go gathering bark everywhere I go, but that is part of my practice. The paper is a nice grayish cotton rag, and when you push it through the press over this bark with the imprinted image, it picks up the texture of the bark and also the flatness of the image, which is photographic and a little bit faded. So this print isn't really, you can't replicate it exactly. Each time I did it, I would use a different set of bark, and I would print, I made each of the circles separately. But this one I love a lot because the print itself is not necessarily visible, but you could feel it. So you're touching on two different ways of experiencing an image. All right, I'm gonna go backwards a little bit. This is some imagery from an artist residency I did at Women's Studio Workshop in Rosendale, New York. I'm gonna be there teaching a workshop next month, I can't wait. While I was there, it was spring and into summer. Through my art practice, I look for non-dominant narratives, and I often find those in the ecological world and in nature. I began work at Women's Studio Workshop bearing in mind how influential place is to my work and a desire to look at location with the female gaze. So place has become important to me because I can't avoid it. Every time I move, which is a lot, I never knew that I would be a person who was kind of like nomadic, but it just appears that's the case. And I can't get my bearings until I like know where I am and why and how and what's going on. And I have a few ways of doing that as a printmaker. One of the series is called Torn Treaties Landscapes, where I look into the history of indigenous peoples and cultures that have been in the place where I am at the time, the treaties that were broken between them and the future United States government, meaning every treaty that was signed. And then I use torn paper to kind of mimic the contours of the landscape there and use colors to also understand the earth tones that I'm around. That's a really grounding practice for me, and it's also a process that I don't edition them or document them very well, but I do distribute them very widely. So it's an art practice that's more of a gift giving and one of me understanding who I am and where I am relative to the place where I am. Okay, so back to the female gaze. We're layering it all together. This is Pavlova came to mind, but that's not a layered, I guess I was thinking about cake. All right. All right. So in regards to the female gaze, it wasn't necessarily a method for approaching the work, but instead a question that guided me. If art history has taught us to see with the male gaze, a lot of things, then to position myself just in opposition to that still served to acknowledge the dominance of that perspective. Instead, I hoped to look carefully, and rather than work from a dominant system, I worked to shift my perspective to create with what is already visible to me, but seemingly overlooked. And that word working with, rather than making work about, is pretty important. It's a subtle difference. This is not helpful to have you on the wrong slide. I apologize. That's what you should have been looking at. All right, here we go. So I was going on a lot of walks, gathering plants as the season shifted. I became very aware of the plants that were growing and going to flower and then kind of dying down, and a new one would come and replace it. On the East Coast, I lived out here for 11 years, and there's kind of like a fervor around spring when things start growing again and humans start emerging. And the invasive plants come back. And then people are really upset about it, and they wage war on these plants. And there's these strange narratives that emerge, and I started paying a lot of attention to the language people used. Because plants don't have legs. They go to a place because humans either made it hospitable for them based on how we've developed land and changed it so drastically, or by bringing them. So at one point, this plant was useful to us, had some properties that were helpful, and now it doesn't, and so it becomes invasive, and it's somehow the enemy. And there's interesting language that's used: native versus non-native, invasive, noxious, exotic. It matters what descriptions describe descriptions. The untold story of how a plant arrived in a place might be just as complex as an immigration story. So here, I'm thinking about my non-human counterparts. I'm making with plants, and in some ways I was trying to figure out how to make for plants. That to me meant avoiding a human-centered perspective. I really do like a human-centered perspective would have led me to say, what is the application or the value of this plant? Is it a good or bad plant? Like lots of people will ask me about plants, and I sort of intentionally keep myself at a distance from the nomenclature, because I know where the nomenclature was developed and by whom, and I don't necessarily think that's a perspective I need to continue to propagate, so to speak. I'm trying to create with plants, and it's a very imperfect process because plants don't speak the same language as I understand and vice versa, but there is an effort to do it, and I think that's like one of the most beautiful parts about art, is that I can make art with plants while always wondering if the plants like it or not. Like, they might really hate my art. All right, so prints, to go back to printmaking, they're made by separating images into layers and putting them back together. There are many integral parts of the process that are never even visible in the finished product. And this is something that's become increasingly important to me as I think about my predecessors and craft and women's work and domestic labor. I'm interested in when a print or really any kind of artwork can complicate an idea, can reveal and conceal layers of complexity within it through color, through patterns. This print on the left, I hated for a really long time until I left it alone and hid it underneath my prints for a few weeks, and then I figured out exactly how to fix it, and it became one of my favorite prints. So I love to show this one and remind all of us that, like, you don't need to throw everything away. Like, we don't need to hoard either, but also you don't know when you're gonna resolve something that at the moment didn't turn out perfect. Like, be kinder to your ideas. Like, it's really important to make bad things in order to make good things. We've been talking in my class a lot about conserving materials, and I did want to touch on that today because I think my perspective has been shifting recently around art making, and it has to do with traveling and going to places where art is a much more pervasive part of culture. We're pretty conservative here. Anyone else know of the gentrification craze? The interiors of houses that are just gray or beige, the exteriors that are also just gray or beige, like the entire thing, the wood floor, the molding, the sink, everything. I mean, we're really conservative in the US with our creative expression. We like sameness. And you go to other places and there's a lot more color going on. There's a lot more craft happening. Kind of everybody can contribute to the culture and, I don't know, creative life that exists. And it reaffirms that, like, making things is a really important part of being a human being. And it doesn't always have to be worth something. Like, it doesn't always have to, like, make you money or result in something financial or a gain. It can be because you enjoy doing it, because humans enjoy making things. That's it. We'll skip this one because I went off on a tangent. All right. There's a motif through this presentation, as well as in my work, of nets and webs, and sometimes people think of them as fences. This is a strategy I have developed in order to make the invisible visible. I love making nets, weaving them. I love that they are two-dimensional objects that can also become three-dimensional, that they can act to care for something, to hold it, but also to constrain, so they contain contradiction, and that they're really, really cross-cultural. Like Nicaragua to Norway, there's fishing cultures, and nets were a part of everybody's life. My stepmom is Japanese, and so that, like, also carries to a culture that I was raised with. Okay, so briefly to talk about tools and strategies. Printmaking, I think most people, if they know what it is, it's not always the most well-known art form, but they may think of it as just about reproduction, whereas I have found a true richness in the process of printmaking. I've made metaphors from the processes, but I also think of, like, I am always collaborating with machinery, which is kind of crazy because I think humans make machinery to do exactly what we tell it to do. But I'm kind of wondering if I can create glitches purposefully or not purposefully with the machines, if I can create mysteries. One of my favorite print scholars, Jennifer Roberts, says that prints are made darkly, which what she means is that when the paper kisses the matrix and comes off, no one sees that moment when the piece of art is created. And I'm like getting little goosebumps thinking about it. Like, I don't actually make the art. It happens by virtue of a process I'm going through in collaboration with a machine. It's very fun to me, and also I get why painters sometimes don't like it, you know, because they want to make the mark, and I feel very differently. But this is a scanner that's actually a pretty old scanner, but it's high technology. It's like using a really fancy old camera. It's intended to scan at depth, but the scanner couldn't scan the depth of this plant. And so I was using a plant, which we might think of as less intelligent than a piece of technological equipment, to outsmart the machine, creating a glitch. These are prints that resulted from that, so scanning them at a super high resolution and creating this, like, it's probably a little difficult to see where the glitch is, but more importantly, these are dye sublimation prints that fade in sunlight. So there's a resonance between the plant that requires sunlight to grow. One of those, the center one, is giant hogweed, which is a very noxious plant that grows super tall, and you have to wear full PPE, hazmat suits, because the sap will get on your skin, and in the sun it will burn. So there's a few layers of like what the sun does in this. Does it age the art? Does it make the plant grow? Does it burn your skin? Here's a close-up of one fading over time. So the drawn squiggles and the net motif are where the image is light fast, and between that it is not. It will fade slowly over time, or quickly, as you can see. Okay, so COVID happened, and I found it to be a pretty difficult time to make art, particularly because there was no one to show, and there was no audience, and there were things that seemed so much more important. But in order to ease my anxieties, I did a lot of walking, which is also part of my art practice. So it was sort of inevitable that I started finding inspiration by just looking carefully at what was around me. I also started thinking a lot about the limits of perception and the limits of knowledge. And I talked with my class this morning about how I felt a lot of freedom in the fact that we didn't know what was going on with COVID. It was an unfolding situation. And for once, science seemed to recognize its own limits. Like, science was not truth, because truth was evading us at that moment. And the plants and animals didn't seem to care. It was kind of nice that we were like the ones panicking for once in this world that we've created that's very hostile to plants and animals. So I was walking to process my anxieties, feeling some sense of like calm and ease around the things that were still just growing. I mean, plants are always sheltering in place. Like I said, they don't have legs. I was wondering what kind of senses plants do have, and I just picked up Susan Simard's book, The Mother Tree, I believe it's called. Have any of you read this? She's one of the researchers who discovered that plants talk to each other. My dad stole the book. But The Overstory, which is a very, very popular book by Richard Powers, has a character similar to Simard. In any case, wondering about what kind of knowledge is happening while we have no idea what's going on, and the fact that like maybe plants, I loved the idea that they could just be going about their day-to-day life while we were kind of like going and completely nuts and panicking. All right, I'm gonna scoot up a little bit. I'd be happy to talk at more length about some of these a little bit later, but I want to talk about my most recent work, which happened last summer. I did an artist residency in Ciudad Mexico, in Mexico City, for 5 or 6 weeks. And the idea of place came to the fore for me because I am not Mexican. So I really was very careful to say, like, all right, this is a deeply colonized place, one of the oldest cities in North America. It literally has layers of colonization and societies, and like, I don't know what nature was there before, but that was a long time ago. Like, you know, it's the oldest recorded city because the first recording was made by a conquistador, and you're like, yeah, so, but there was things that happened before then, you know. Anyway, the history is written by those who, yeah. So I was there and thinking very carefully about having some representation of the colonizer within myself and not wanting to work in a way that extracted from this place, but rather was generous and productive. And printmaking, because you do use up resources and materials, and pressure has a certain amount of violence built into it, I was trying to figure out ways to do things that didn't include that. And what I decided to do was largely drawings and cyanotypes and rubbings. And these started to become weavings. These ones I started just at the beginning. I was also thinking about obscuring part of the information and what is visible and invisible. When you make a weaving with paper, which is a pretty stupid way to make a weaving because it's very hard. That's why there are looms. But my friend who's a weaver was like, looms are stupid too, Paloma. Like, it's just old technology that takes so long to do, but it's really satisfying. So I just couldn't kind of escape doing it, but I did think, like, there's all this labor that's invisible in this, and there's all this imagery that's invisible in it. Like, it's censored in a way, and you'll never know what's behind it, and you'll never know who made it. This one in particular has behind it a letter that is about queer longing and desire, and that's partially obscured. So here are some of the cyanotypes that resulted from my work there. I was, ironically enough, I was really excited about cyanotypes in Mexico City, but in August. But despite what you think, it's not hot there in August, and it is not that sunny. So every time it was sunny, cyanotypes are a sun-based photographic process, I would kind of like fling everything I was doing aside and like run up to the roof of the residency and make cyanotypes really fast. And I made them with whatever material I had around, including my body, nets I had made, and the house plants that were part of the place where I was staying, and including like the furniture, the laundry bits and pieces, and then some of the pieces of we've got clothespins, some of the weavings before they became weavings. The paper that is going on the weft is to the left. You're welcome. You can say it in your head, though. The weft is oftentimes in these rubbings that I made as I walked around the city. So another way of like trying to respond and reflect on being in a place that I was not from, but that I could be influenced by and do something that was like non-extractive but recognize the surfaces of things. There's also a project by I'm pretty sure it's Doho Sut, maybe folks know it, called Rubbing/Loving. And he covers the interior of his home with rubbings on paper and discusses how much care you have to give a surface in order to create a rubbing of it. So very much I was thinking about that. This is the front and back, which it says right there. Okay, so to get back to my comment, and I should wrap up quickly, but to get back to my comment about making art because you want to. Being in Mexico City was a pretty amazing experience. I hope everybody has the opportunity to go because there's a seeming like abandon with which people approach creative outlets. The grout is a beautiful color. We had a bathroom in the residency space that was entirely pink, including the toilet and sink, the ceiling and the floor. Like everything has a little bit of like, why not make it more interesting looking, you know, which I don't see in the US. And so I let that be really inspiring to me and really kind of like rolled with what was coming. And I found myself very creatively liberated there. Sometimes I have a big inner critic, really loud, want to tell it to shut up, but it'll take 3 weeks to get that thing to shut up. And when I was there, art came out of me like it just needed to. And I think that if there's anything that like I can say to people to others about making art, it's like, say yes to yourself. Say it's okay. Like, be really all right with making things that you don't think are that great, because that's part of it. And making things, the process of it, is truly important. I think that this is like, there are a lot of things going on in the world that we don't have control over, but like, there's a sort of gratitude for being human in doing the things that we uniquely do, which is create. Here are those pieces installed. I started working with quilting, bringing quilting into the work with cyanotypes. The one here on the left, these are smaller pieces that I took around the city and exposed on the go with me, and then brought them back and made them into a Mobius strip. Cyanotypes are two-sided, which is kind of incredible. I think that's about it. Thank you so much.
Amazing. Thank you, Paloma. Let's have some more applause for Paloma Barhaugh-Bordas. Sleep on in there, Mike. Go ahead. Now we're going to have a little Q&A, and we're going to get all the mics turned on. And then we're live streaming this, so if you have a question, wait till you get a mic from Han or Fatima, so that our audience at home can hear your questions. Any questions for Paloma or Mike?
Hello. Hi. Thank you both for your talks. I found it really fascinating. This question is a little bit more directed toward Paloma, but I'd love both of your thoughts. I'm also really interested in place and looking toward ecology and nature as a way to find roots, but I can find that hard when places are constantly changing, either inherently as part of a transformative ecological process or as a result of human activity. How do you sort of reckon with like the permanence of nature? Is that at odds with your wanting to find notes of like an ancestral homeland? Or if you could speak to that, I would find it interesting. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that question. I think that's actually what got me started on a lot of this, is that when I moved to the East Coast and was driving from Virginia to New York, that really long 95 route, someone pointed out to me that the entire eastern seaboard had been clear cut, and what you saw around you was new growth. And I was like, what? Like, that blew my mind. But the crazy thing is that Colorado, where I'm from, the forests there, also all new growth. Like, the impact that humans have had on the earth is it's inconceivable. So I think that I don't know, I just like, I allow myself to be in awe a lot. Like, there's a 300-year-old shark swimming around out there. That guy, seen it. He has seen it all. But yeah, looking, I mean, and getting my hands on whatever kind of research or literature is done by people who are not Eurocentric white guys. You know, like, not from the historical sense, but from people who like have a different kind of relationship to land, feels really important to me, since there are a lot of stories that haven't been told. So in some ways, I think you know, like the narrative that I'm going to tell about this is going to be uniquely my own, because there are just not that many Nicaraguan Norwegians to tell our story. And in that way, like, I guess I have to kind of like forge my own way. But yeah, we are really changing landscape quickly, and it is hard to keep track of it. It's so much bigger than us to do that. And there's like a sadness and loss in it, but nature is really resilient too. And I think that there's a lot of hope in that. Anyway.
Hi. I enjoyed both of these presentations so much, and I feel like I learned a lot from both of you. I'm interested in how you have developed creative community, particularly Paloma, since you seem to have moved a lot, but also Mike, because it seems as if moving to Northampton was understandably a big deal in your presentation, and also bold, I think. So I'm just curious about that process of building community where you are as artists, and especially with your very encouraging words about why people should make art, whether it's writing or whatever kind of art, because you want to and not because money tells you to.
And I actually have moved several times also, and I was just talking with Anya, someone else in our class today, about the importance of creative community and how disorienting it is, especially after, you know, going to college and you're with your creative peers 24/7, and you create this like creative community, creative family, and then suddenly you're all kind of flung to the four corners of the world, and it's very difficult. Like there's such a loss. Like I really felt adrift after college, even though I did move with some friends, but I, you know, didn't see other friends for a very long time. And then the friends I moved with also moved, and yeah, and I feel like everywhere that I've moved to, there is this sort of like long process of rediscovering community on lots of different levels, and my communities have looked kind of different depending on where I've moved. It was interesting moving, so I moved from Syracuse, was college. I moved to Seattle, Washington, and it took me a long time to find creative community there, and I did find it in just like a handful of people, but they became so important to me. One in particular, and we like shared a studio space, and so there was that, and it was also like the first time I made queer community, and which I really needed. And then moving to New York, it was the first time I had a real like kidlit, like children's book community, and so that was like really nourishing in a new exciting way. And moving to Northampton, there are more children's book folks there also, which is like a funny thing. And I did find community there also. You know, it's just, I don't know if I'm getting lost in the sauce here, but yeah, it just, you know, it takes time, it takes cultivation. I mean, if you just think of it in a bigger scale, right, just making connections with anyone when you move, I think is a challenge for anybody. And especially the older you get, I feel like, you know, trying to make new friends in my late 30s, early 40s has been like, okay, I don't know. But when you do meet someone that kind of lights you up, you're like, oh, friend crush, like, oh my God, I need you in my life. So I don't know. But maybe because like we get older, we get better at like weeding through like, oh, that's not really gonna work out anyway. Anyway, you talk.
That was very on the nose. I mean, I think it's really hard to make community, and without going into too much detail, I would just say maybe don't move to LA. It's really hard to make friends there, and I could have strategized a little hard, but I'm leaving. I'm moving to Texas now. But I think like the main thing I would say that at this point in my life, the type of community that I desire to be around. Like, I really admire my mother's community. They're not extremely close friends, but she has a broad network of people who do really amazing things for the community, and it's very diverse. And I just really respect that web that she's been able to hold of these people from all different walks of life. And I respect it because I can be very picky about friends, where I'm like, no, we have to have the same sense of humor and they have to like eating what I order. And I can be kind of picky about it instead of being a little bit more open to valuing people's or like their integrity. In any case, my new strategy, which I invite everybody to try, is that moving to Texas, I would like to get involved in mutual aid and volunteering. One, because it is, especially in a place like that, where it's a very different political orientation than what I have, it allows you to be of service, like to help others and acknowledge that you need help too. Like, it's not paternal. I think that's really important. Printmaking, thank goodness, is a community sort of art form, which I love, but I will say, like, being a professor, I'm surrounded by 20-ish-year-olds all the time, 20-ish-year-olds, and then people who are just a bit of a generation older than me. So I am hoping at a bigger school I will have more friends to make at work, but that's another one where I'm like, how do I do this? It's not easy.
I volunteered also.
Volunteering.
That really helps. Anyway.
Yeah. Taking workshops.
Yes.
Taking workshops, doing residencies
is
also a big part of how I've like created community.
Yeah, and I have attended like workshops and conferences and made connections there, and like have a sort of remote creative community. I feel like my creative community is more further afield these days, but I do keep in touch with people.
From here.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So, hi Paloma. I had a quick question for you about I don't know, I just have been wondering about it, the last image that you showed as the end card for your presentation that was like this large sort of translucent print. What was that printed on? I guess I probably could have asked this afterwards, sorry.
Thank you for asking. No. Yeah, I sprung that one on you. That is a dye sublimation print, which is the process that the wavy plants were on, but it's on mesh. So that's like a permeable fabric that has a photographic image on it, and it is, there's cyanotype around the edges, and it's a little bit racy because it's a quilt that I was like, well, I really don't need another quilt, so how do I make the opposite of a quilt, and why would I want this quilt? And I was like, well, I would want a quilt for people to make love under, and it's a scissoring quilt that is mesh, so it does nothing but gesture towards the consummation between two people, and like in that way also contradicts what a quilt should do. Like, it's not going to keep you warm. So yeah, that's why it's art.
It's like the lingerie of quilts.
It is the scissoring quilt.
I love that. That's all.
Running over to you. So far away, it's like a game show. Thank you. I have the big question for you, Mike. How do you keep your equanimity in the maelstrom of, social media and right-wing nonsense and all of that? What have you done? How have you preserved your mental health, if you have? And what tips do you have for the rest of us?
Yeah, it's been an interesting time. You could ask me that question on a different day, and I could, I'm feeling great today, and maybe tomorrow it's like not a good day. I definitely last summer not long before I came here, like I hit a wall where, you know, it's just this constant stream of hate. And just to give some context, Flamer came out in 2020 to great reviews and applause, and it was all, you know, it was all frosting. And then in 21, a Texas lawmaker came out with this McCarthy era-esque list of books that must be investigated because why are these in our schools? Like, what are these people trying to do to our children? And so my book was on one of those lists, and because it's queer, and because it's visual, it was like the lowest hanging fruit, no pun intended, for people to attack, because it's very easy to grab a picture of something, take it out of context. So yeah, so my book, along with a bunch of others, have been paraded around as like, you know, these sick people are, you know, trying to destroy our culture, whatever. And of course, it's a smokescreen. It's a distraction from other things going on in the world that desperately need our attention. So many other topics we could be spending time and energy on. Anyway, there's the context. So, you know, I feel like I have done everything that I possibly can, in like doing interviews, writing letters to schools, taking to social media, all these things, and you know, and the hate just piled on. And I hit a wall last summer, and I had to make some decisions, right? Which included deleting my Twitter account, because I saw that as more of a source of negative energy than good. I didn't feel like it was a tool that was useful to me anymore. I kept my Instagram and my Facebook, but I changed tons of settings. So, for example, only people who follow me can comment. And it's kind of easier to, you know, I've caught a few folks who start following me that I'm like, something tells me you're not a fan. Bye. So there's like a little screening process there. But, and I also had to start slowing my roll with how many interviews I was doing, and I had to be more selective about like what's going to reach more people, because the biggest problem was it was sucking the life out of me, and I wasn't investing the time into doing the work. You know, I have a book that I'm wrapping up now. It should be done by now. It's very late, and I have a lot I want to say with this other book, you know, and so now it has to come out next summer, which fine, and it's going to be done. But yeah, I just had to make that decision of putting my energy into new work is, I think, the best thing that I can do to help right now, because I've said everything I can possibly say, and that's not going to change anything. And it's kind of like, you know, getting back to community, like it's not on the authors entirely. It's up to entire communities to say, that's enough, you know? And it's scary because the precedent has been set where like some very vocal minorities can like start shouting about something, you know, and yeah, it's out of hand. But
so you tell me about. So do you because I've gotten a little bit of internet hate, and I just go crazy. Like it just feels so. You feel so vulnerable, and you feel so like running away.
Yeah.
And so do you compartmentalize it? Do you like shore up your own support circle? Do you?
Kind of all of that, because I mean, I've definitely relied on my community. I'd be like, I need, you know, it's like you need to ask people for help and be like, please take care of me, you know, and I have to take care of myself. And so that's why I made those choices about social media. But I think it also feeds me in a way, because it's like, okay, you're kind of proving the point as to why books like mine need to exist. So I'm going to continue doing that work. And now it's funny because, you know, people think that flamer is somehow provocative, and I'm like, maybe wait a moment for my next book. Anyway, pearls will be clutched. Yeah, so I think, and also like my author community has been so supportive, and my publisher's been very supportive, and my agent and editor especially have like really, like just really showed up for me. So, so there's that, and also at the end of the day, it's still my name that's getting like thrown around. So I think those of us on that list really have been feeling it. And I will say that doing public events, I mean, this feels like a very safe space, but like, say last year, I did, or earlier this year, I did like a public event in Indiana at a library that the Proud Boys have been known to show up to and disrupt events. And I was like, I'm scared. And I had to really think hard about like, am I gonna do this? And I talked with the library, and they were great, and I felt very reassured by their security, and the staff were on it, and things went pretty well. And I did have someone who showed up in line to say some things to me. It's a new time for me.
But then also, so much of your work is about keeping your heart open and vulnerable, and
yeah, it's very hard. That's the challenge, right? It's like, in order to fight that kind of hatred, I have to continue to be vulnerable, which is very taxing. I have to continue to like show my humanity, which I shouldn't have to do. I shouldn't have to remind people that I'm a human being, but that's all I can do, right? Because if I shut down, then I start to assimilate, and I start to let them take more ground, and I feel like that's the only way I can fight, is by being open.
well, that's an incredible answer, and thank you for being so honest with this.
Thanks.
And thank you for being so strong. I mean, honestly, like, that sounds cheesy, but really, it's inspiring.
Can we have like one more big round of applause for Paloma Barhaugh-Bordas and Mike Curato? Remember, Mike will be signing books at the back of the room. Check out the gallery if you have not seen the exhibition. The summer exhibition is wonderful. Thanks again to East End Books for helping us manage our bookstore at the back. Jeff Peters, the owner of East End Books, is at the back. Say hello. And come back tomorrow night. We have another great event with Paul Lisicki and Matthew Olsman, both of whom are in the room. Thank you all so much. Have a great night.